This is Culture, Communication, and Brand Moments with Shelby Joe Long, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet, hear their stories, and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. Culture, Communication, and Brand Moments is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Shelby Joe Long.
Hi, welcome to the podcast today. It's the Genius Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Shelby Joe Long. I'm your host, and I have the opportunity to talk to people about their journeys into entrepreneurship when they decided to transform their genius method or their genius ideas into an income stream. And today is no exception. I have the opportunity to talk to Fritz Colinet. Fritz and I have known each other for a few months now, in the same business networking circles, in the very similar business areas. We both work in the branding space and the marketing space. A little bit different approach. So I'm excited to hear more about your story. Fritz, welcome to the interview today.
Thank you, Shelby. How's everything doing? How you doing today?
Oh, it's good. It's Friday. It feels good to be on the cusp of a weekend that's filled with sports, right? So that's what the fall is.
Friday. I wish every day was Friday, but then we'll get nothing done, unfortunately. Right?
Right. Then we're just sitting around having conversations and talking about the weekend. But I'm excited that you're here today because I am excited to learn more about your story and more about your entrepreneurship journey. And I think it's important for our audience to know that too. So give us an overview of you and your business, where you are right now.
Okay, so we're a full service branding and marketing firm called Retna Media. We see things differently, hence Retna Media, right? And I like to, we look at our clients and we look at with a solution-driven process. So doesn't matter what the service that we're offering, we're always looking at how we're going to solve the overall problem or challenge or pain point for our clients and then deliver abundant value for them, right? So it could be they need a website or they need, personal branding or they have a new product or service. We create a strategy to achieve that particular goal, right? So, and, we're here in Houston, Texas currently, where there's 2 seasons, hot and hotter, right? So, and
so it's the hotter right now.
Exactly, it is the hotter, or 2 months, I would say.
Houston, Texas doesn't need and it doesn't have an issue with branding. It's usually pretty consistent, right? There's not much.
Probably the only state that the world knows. Right?
You're probably right.
So you have
probably
Texas,
right.
New York, California.
Yep. Not many people know Montana. So yes, you're probably right.
Well, actually, Yellowstone, I think everyone's knowing Montana.
Yeah, that's true. The whole Yellowstone effect, that's become the brand of Montana for sure. Right. And people come here thinking they're going to find Yellowstone, which they do, but that's true. That had something to do with the brand of the state. So let's talk more about this branding journey of yours or this branding company of yours. What kind of clients do you typically work with?
Well, we work with a wide variety of clients, whether it's blue chip clients, medium-sized, small business owners, or solopreneurs or bootstrapping, individuals. The great thing about your brand, whether it's a personal brand or your business brand, it's great to start it at the beginning of the infancy of your business. So at least you can start and have the journey with your brand and building equity in that brand and all the components of your brand. Where if you want a brand and you want to refresh or reinvent it, there's going to be equity from the past brand and there's luggage that you're going to have to carry, and there might be some biases. So
absolutely. Yeah, I got a question about that actually, because as our audience knows, we work in a very similar space. I work with brands and help them add streams of revenue to their brand and to what they offer, and e-commerce side of it. So I find that when then people move from, the beginning to that they're offering more, do you find that when there's that, is there a transition in that brand? Do they have to shift? Or can brands often keep those core principles if they develop that from the very beginning?
The brands, like any brand, is an evolution, but you have to identify who you are first. That's the most important part of whether it's your personal brand, your business brand, or the brand of your service. Who you are, what you offer, and what makes you unique. A lot of times you have, clients or customers that just go in and just start building, right? They're building the plane while it's in the air. But what kind of plane you want to build? What type of customers, you want on the plane, right? Where are you going? So we identify those components and help them build the right brand to achieve their business goal through marketing and advertising and branding. Right. So, and it's always fun. I love it. It's always fun. You're always seeing, identifying something, a new opportunity, and how can we rebrand this? How can we elevate this brand and amplify the characteristics of that person or that brand? And that's what's great about when you, like, step one, who you are, right? So where we have the characteristics of this person or this brand, and we're amplifying those characteristics into superhero characteristics. And especially when you're talking about a personal brand, you want to identify what are your characteristics? What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be really known for? What makes you great? So, and if it's just these 3 items or characteristics, then let's just kind of amplify that. Let's put gasoline on it and let's just amplify it, make it larger than life, right? So that's first component of building a brand. What makes you you?
What makes you you? And I think, especially, I work with a lot of solopreneurs and coaches, and I think I think that question is not often asked, or people don't think about how important that is to marketing and how important it is to developing their business, is that they are the focus. If they are selling their own personality and their own perspective on things, and they have to be central to that. And I think it's often something that people think of later, but they need to think of in the beginning.
Shelby, you're 100% correct. A lot of times when you're thinking about it towards the end or the middle of your journey, you've actually helped your competitor, and we don't realize that what we did was add more eyeballs to the industry to now hand it over to our competitor. Right? When we start thinking that way, we start realizing, okay, let me phase this out, step 1, step 2, right? And start really kind of crafting who we are. Most coaches, they know who they're not.
Right?
They can tell you that immediately. But when you ask them who they are, they say, well, I'm a, business coach. Okay. What type of business coach? Well, executive business. Okay. So you start trying to unearth this, and they really have to ask themselves, who are they really? Because just to say that you are an executive business coach, I can Google executive business coach and I'm going to get 1 million+ results. So they have to identify who they are.
Got to be much more refined in that process.
Yes.
So tell me what inspired you to get into the idea of brands. I know you're a visual artist as well. Can you give us a little? Does that inspire getting into brands and promotional ideas, marketing?
So
what inspired that?
I had a really interesting journey as a youth in New York City. So I'm creative. I draw, I paint, draw, sculpt. I love the composition of form and letters. I went to the High School of Art and Design. I went to Pratt. So I was always creative as a youngster. I'm always around a lot of creative individuals. And I really gravitated towards how something looks. Now, in my journey, I realized I would create something, especially artists at that time. You create your portfolio, in New York, you had to drop your portfolio off. You left and they called you back to pick up your portfolio. You never were interviewed, like that zero point of contact. You never were interviewed. So it's just the secretary at the front. And you can ask her all the questions you want. Well, how come nobody called me back? Who did they hire? What are you guys really looking for? She wouldn't know, right? So now, and school really didn't prepare you for that. I learned the hard way that when you're presenting your work, you really have to present yourself and the reasons why you're choosing this color, that font, this particular, why is this person posed in this manner? What's the aura? So you're selling the story and as well as the art. So same thing with when you're creating a brand, you really have to start telling that story. And I learned, the hard way, hey, you tell the story of the brand and where they're going, where they're at now, and where the possibilities of where they could go. The great thing that we're able to unearth is we can help clients see past all the clouds behind the building. Like, I know you want to go here, but your possibilities are here. And I'm going to show you how to get there. So these are the steps we're going to take to get here. And they really gravitate towards that because they've only realized they're scratching the surface of building their brand, company. And we're able to put together a strategy, not only that you can achieve that goal in half of the time that you've indicated, but also you can achieve these other 3 goals in the time that you allocated. So
yeah. I want you to talk a little bit more about story. Story is, in my perception, it's absolutely critical to have your good story for your brand. But what do you think the difference is, or the, I guess, relationship is between the personal story and the brand story? Those are in my mind, are 2 different things. That how your brand developed is one story, but then is your personal story involved with that? What do you think? Is there a difference there, or do you think they function in the same way?
Well, they function the same way, but depending on the industry and depending on your target audience, what we discount is who's our target audience, right? What are the pain points, and are we creating our brand story to help, solve that pain point, right? So we could start our personal story and how we turn that personal story into a business. I think is fantastic, right? I mean, case in point, I was working for an agency in the Midwest. I moved to Houston and I said, hey, I'm just going to get a job. So I went on a bunch of interviews, and literally I was at one interview and the guy said, well, you're overqualified. Okay, fine, I get it. I'm overqualified. So I went on another one and he said, hey, you're great. You're fantastic. Love your portfolio. You ran 3 departments. You worked on, blue chip brands, right? Smaller brands. So I knew a wide variety of strategies. I could run a department, multiple departments. And he said, well, if we hire you, you just might take my job and this other guy's job. I don't want your job. So the unfortunate part, when I moved to Houston, there weren't a lot of advertising agencies. So the mindset was different at that point. And I said, well, since I'm not gonna, I felt like I needed just to open up my own gig. And I had my side hustle that turned into my permanent hustle. Right?
Yeah. Did you have have some entrepreneur influence in your life, your folks and people around you because I know for me, it was, both my parents are entrepreneurs, but I didn't really think of it as something that I do. I knew I just kind of staying in academia was something that was comfortable to me. And I love teaching and all of that. And then I didn't really ever think about the challenges of entrepreneurship. And I didn't think about that. So did you have influences for entrepreneurship, or did you just all of a sudden think, I'm just going to do this on my own?
I know I've been an entrepreneur since I was a child, right? So when everyone gets like their little, stipends for the week as a child, right? Your little allowance. But as most kids, they want something more. But my parents weren't able to give me more. Like, hey, if you want it, then you have to figure it out, right? Which is great. But I'm an artist. So guess what? I'm going to use, this universe provides you with the tools to utilize how you see fit. So at that point, it was the height of the hip hop era. Everybody wanted like jean jackets, painted jean jackets. They wanted airbrushed shirts or, clothing. So I did jean jackets. I painted jean jackets. I was 13 years old. I was painting jean jackets and I was charging $200, $150, depending on what component you wanted on your jean jacket. You wanted your name, you wanted like the background. So I had a tool, and I was making money doing this, right? I mean, it took some time, but I made my own money and I was happy about it. To this day, I tell my kids, hey, if you want it, you have the opportunity. You have more tools to your disposal than I did. Right? So with my young entrepreneurship, and then as I got older, it turned into more and more and more, right? So it went from creative assets to branding to marketing and branding. And I was doing a lot of marketing for a lot of different folks as a side hustle.
Yeah. Right. And then you decided to transform that into your full time.
Exactly. I transformed that, which was fantastic. I transformed that into what I am today, branding, marketing, do quite a bit of consulting, but help large businesses see how we can take their brand and amplify it. And a lot of times we think of branding as a logo, right? So that's just one component of your brand. Your brand is the emotional connection that your brand has with its target audience, its customers, prospect. That's really what your brand is, right? Everything else are just components of it. And we as either individuals or companies, we're challenged with the distractions and also the interactions of, should we change this color to, instead of it being like a peacock green, let's change it to this green and now you're only in it for a month or two, but you're being influenced by everything. A lot of times you have to just say, hey, I can't be influenced by everything else. Humanity loves consistency, right? So because you're building trust, you do business with people you know, trust, and respect. You got to know them. We're talking about awareness, right? You got to trust them, right? So once you trust them, you respect them. So it goes with not only personal brands, but businesses as well. And you see that in the media all the time. Folks who, for personal brands, folks who let you down and you're angry at them. You don't even know them, but you're angry. You're upset.
You lost my trust. It's true. It happens. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel that's something that is so important to remember, that the brand is the emotional connection. It's not just the logo. It's how a person feels when they're in your coffee shop or feels when they are working with you, or that's such an important part of the brand that I think we all need to be reminded of, because it formulates how we communicate and how we engage with people. And I think that's such an important part of a brand that we forget. So,
and forgetting is, unfortunately, it's that evil that happens within larger companies, because we forget to onboard every employee about our mission, our core values, who we are, right? So if the person who's answering the phone does not know what the brand is about, our core values, the emotional, what we do, then the marketing team for that company has done a disservice to the brand. Hands down, and that happens time and time again. And we have to remember that everyone in the company, from the leader all the way down to someone in the mailroom, they have to know the core values and the mission of the company. When we stop doing that, we start growing as a brand, and we don't realize that we have our first line of defense is our employees.
mm-hmm. It's such a key. I work a lot in organizational culture and leadership too. It's such a key thing for that. It's the executives marketing to their employees, right? To make sure that that's consistent, to make sure the language is consistent and the feel is consistent. And it has everything to do with culture in the internal communication, but also the external. So I think I think it's very important, even going through like an intense brand marketing exercise with a company like yours allows a company to really look internally too. So
exactly. And when you're building brands, you're talking about internal, we help our clients create that communication internally, and then we can push that externally, because you have to get everyone on board. And a lot of times companies are not really explaining the reason why we're doing X, Y, Z. What are our core values? And a lot of times you see these core values and it's like a dossier. Mm-hmm. Most people can't remember yesterday. Now you want them to read like 25 core values. Right. Can we, half of them are you're repeating the same thing. So we have to understand how humanity interprets information and retains information. Right? And how are we going to take that information, and now it's a badge of honor for them to recite that information to everyone else. So if it feels like homework, it's homework. Our job as branding experts and communicators is, let's not make it difficult. Let's make it easy for our population to digest, understand, and retain, because there's so many distractions every day.
If I didn't know you like I do already, I would say that you're a communication person, true and true. You must teach it, because that's what we talk about too, as a communication. In the communication discipline, it's all about your audience and connecting and making sure you resonate and making sure that, yes, you have to have two active parts there are two active pieces to a transaction, the sender and the receiver, but then the message in the middle and how it resonates, and if it's the right language, there's a lot of the encoding and decoding that are part of that. And it's important to remember that, and particularly important when it comes to your brand and how it operates.
When you talk about how your brand operates, it's one of the components that businesses have to look into and say, hey, how are we pushing our brand values? What is the messaging that we're pushing out, right? And are we pushing or are we pulling? Right. So what are the vehicles that we're going to use as a pull, as a push? What are the touch points? What's the customer journey? What's the customer emotional journey? That's something that we don't even, we do that for our clients. For most branding agencies or branding companies, they're not even talking about the emotional journey, right? So when someone's on a high, what kind of communication so we can keep them going up, or when they're low, how can we bring them back up? right? And
Right.
we go through emotional journeys every time we have interactions with anything, right? So we like to say, you're in a relationship with everything you encounter. You have a relationship with you and your barista, right? And everyone asks themselves one question: what's in it for me?
Right.
Right. So even you and your pet, right? You and this planet, myself and the Zoom and yourself, like we're having this relationship. And whether we identify it or not, we have to realize that we're in this exchange and this dance that we have to, gracefully move with. So
Absolutely. And we need to be reminded of that as business owners, that everything we do reflects upon our brand. And we need to be consistent about that.
yes, and we don't, business owners, they have a personal brand. Everyone has a personal brand, right? And everything is engineered for the right outcome. It depends on how you engineer it. Right. So if you're building, it's just, I love to hear when folks go, well, just create a logo, right? Like that's not what you want. You want to create a brand, right? And in today's market, everyone's like a brand. 90% of the folks have no idea what a brand is. They think it's a logo and a T-shirt and a hat, right?
Right.
Right. But when
Which is part of it, but it's not the whole thing.
But people do not buy products, they buy brands.
Absolutely. I say that all the time.
Exactly. That's why we're on the same page. We're here.
Yeah, all the time. You choose to eat where you want to eat because you like the people that serve you. You choose, they don't buy products, you buy brands. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we could probably talk all day about this since we're in the same space, but I wanted to ask, because you took the leap of the other thing I wanted to talk about too, is that I think you had a recognition, or at least an awareness of your genius or your unique offer to the world pretty early. Would you say that's accurate? Like you knew you were an artist. You knew that was your gift. Would you say that's pretty accurate?
That's really accurate. I already knew that I was creative. I could draw, I could paint, I could, form letters, right? So I could create caricatures, I can illustrate, and I'm pretty good illustrator, right?
You kind of knew that from your high school, or even before that, you knew that. But then I think it's great to hear your story, because you actually recognized that early, and then that influenced it did influence your career, but it probably influenced a lot of pieces of your life, is that you recognized that early. Because I think that people have a hard time recognizing their genius outside of where they're working, right? Or outside of their activities or education. And I think that's a unique quality. And yeah, I just kind of recognize that from when you were talking.
So when I was a kid and I'd come home from school, and this was when I was in middle school. So I have two brothers, one older and one younger. So we'd come home from school. So we went to school together. We'd come home, and every day I would sit down on the dining table, and I told myself I have to draw something 8.5 by 11 on an 8.5 by 11 sheet every day. And it has to be not just one thing. I have to finish it before I can go outside and play. This is the challenge that I put on myself. So we have to realize that you have to take control of where you want to go. I realized if I wanted to be a better artist, I had to be consistent. I had to really kind of dig in deep of whether it's drawing, painting, sculpting, right? So much so that when the opportunity presented itself to go to the High School of Art and Design, and I knew that, hey, I was going to be competing with kids that went to traditional training on how to, illustrate and how to draw, or they went to classes. I didn't do that. That's something that I, at the time we couldn't afford as a family, but I'm like, hey, I have a pencil, I have paper. If you're amazing, everyone could see past everything else. I just have to be great. And I have to put in the time and consistency and just do it. And that's one thing we realized, that we have to be consistent at just doing one thing really great. And I call it, it's like your utility, it's like Batman's utility belt, right? So do one thing really great. That's your one thing, you got it in your belt. Then do the next thing really great. And that's the other thing. Those two, you can create something else. So just keep on adding to your utility belt, or your champion belt, or your superhero belt.
I think that's important to point out, especially about a skill, is that, you're an artist. I am in communication. If I'm not practicing that, then I'm not honing my own skills, nor do I have the ability to compete with people that have also done the work. So we need to remember to do that. It's not just something we fall back on. It's something we're constantly engaging and living and doing these things. And if we're not doing that, then we're not serving ourselves or serving our own genius. I think that's an important thing to remember. So from that. And then I think it becomes clear that that's your entrepreneurial path, that then you build a business around it.
And that's, you're right. You start identifying what makes you happy, what makes you see other people smile when you provide them with a service, right? And you're like, hey, yeah, I think I can take it to the next level. And a lot of times, either we're passionate about going to the next level, or there's challenges in the next level, and we kind of pull back. We have to tell ourselves, life is like an elevator. Sometimes you need to get off and learn something, and sometimes you need to keep on going, right? So if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you.
What would be your advice to a person out there that was thinking about stepping into entrepreneurship or creating a business out of their genius? What would be your advice to that, other than the stepping into it and facing your fear? So
outside of don't be afraid, right? I would say just plan certain steps and realize that the steps to get to the goal could always change, but the goal is always the same. Like, you're going to fall, you're going to fail, get up fast, learn from your mistakes, always, keep on learning, and realize that there's a huge opportunity, and never think that there's only one solution. That's the one thing that a lot of folks, and that what we look at, especially myself, I look at things totally different from most creative agencies, because I'm able to put on multiple hats. I'm able to put on the hat of the creative, the strategist, right? The owner of the business, or the middle management. So I'm able to kind of put on these hats and understand some of the components to help build this brand, and what the shoes that person may be feeling, or the emotion that person may be feeling. So
absolutely.
Your question.
Yeah, I think it's the facing your fear, and don't be afraid to fail and try something else. And I really like that you have a goal, but there's many different ways to get there. It doesn't have to be a linear path. And I think that's so, I'm still teaching too, but like being in that space, it's like, it's not just producing a business plan and then following the things in your business plan. You have to adapt to the market. You have to adapt to, if you can't sell your product, you've got to figure something out, because you've got to make that connection to make your business go. And so I think it speaks to some really important lessons about pivoting. Like, your core genius doesn't have to change, but your methods might have to change a little bit.
And we also have to realize the inner chatter or the exterior chatter, we have to tell ourselves to keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So most trees or plants, when it's planted in the ground, it's going to find water. Its roots are going to keep on looking for water. It's going to try to grow. It was put here on the planet to grow. That's it. So you're put here to grow. So figure it out, right? The great thing about currently the state of the digital world, you have access to so much, where in the past, like I remember I had to go to the library, right? So if I wanted a reference book, I had to go to the reference section. I couldn't take it out. And then if I wanted to draw this, this particular item, right, I had to hope that no one tore out that sheet out of the damn book.
Yeah.
So now you don't have those challenges. You have 10,000 or 1,000,000 different ways to a result of what you're looking for. And if you don't like the way that person is teaching, change it and find someone else. We didn't have that luxury.
Right.
That was the person who was teaching. That's the person you have to learn from.
Now the opportunities are just everywhere.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And you can create your own solution. Well, Fritz, we could talk about brand. We could talk about communication. We could talk about entrepreneurship journey all day long. But I think we have discovered some very important pieces here. And I think the one thing to pull from the interview is that you knew what your gift was so early in your life. You knew what it was when you came home from school and you sat down at the table and you drew every day. And our genius is something that we like to do, something that we feel that we're good at, something that we want to get better doing. And often that's something that we haven't thought to monetize or haven't thought to put in the marketplace. And I think that's an inspiration to our audience to think about, I have a gift and I can share it, and there is a place in the market for it. So I think that's my takeaway from today. You're
absolutely right. There is everyone has a genius in them. They just have to discover it. And you may have to try different things out, right? So you
absolutely.
And that's what's really important. I challenge everyone to at least every 2 weeks, try something new, try something different, right? So if you're a 9-to-5er, right, and you're working for a company, understand what are the goals of the company. The decisions that you're making day to day, ask, would I do this? Would I act like this? Would I do X, Y, Z, right? But if you're trying to find your genius and you're trying to discover it, then go out in the market and try different industries, try different, points of contact, network, find out what you like, what you don't like, right? Or just make a list, stuff you don't like, stuff that you're indifferent to, and stuff that you love. And it could be personal stuff, it could be business, like just so hey, if it's in the stuff I don't like, I don't want to do that anymore. And stuff that you're indifferent to, you're like, okay, I'm indifferent to it, but these are the things that I love. I love, cooking on the weekends. Okay, cool. Explore that. What type of cuisine, right? So you explore those opportunities, because the only thing we can control is time. So we can't control time.
So true. So true. So many good things out of this interview today. I'm really happy that you joined me on the Genius Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for seeing my
I see your genius. And I think there's a lot of things that there's just so many intersections, and there's some cool things that could happen. So I'm very excited that you gave us so much of your wisdom and your journey today. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And to all of you genius entrepreneurs out there, it's just asking yourself the simple question, what is my gift? And how can I share that to the world? And because that's what differentiates you, and that's what makes your brand unique. And it's something that you can offer to the world that no one else can. So this conversation today did nothing but inspire that for us to think about and how we can enter it into the marketplace. So thanks again, Fritz. And we look forward to speaking to all you genius entrepreneur listeners again to inspire you to think about your genius in a different way. Feel free to reach out to me to talk about some strategy behind that, or to follow the Genius Entrepreneur podcast to hear more stories like Fritz. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Culture, Communication, and Brand Moments with your host, Shelby Jo Long. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.